Hey, you made it to CSS. Give yourself a round of applause. You earned that. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Oh, yeah, we made it to CSS. I think at this point, the hard stuff is pretty much done. It's still going to look weird, and it still might be a little confusing, but in terms of the overall project, something like this, putting in the CSS and putting in the JavaScript to make this thing work, really isn't going to be too bad. So what is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet, and it's basically what makes your website look pretty. So let's take a look here. Unfortunately, we can't change this with CSS because this was built in Microsoft Paint. It's an image file, I think a PNG file maybe, JPEG. It's a file that exists on my computer, so we can't use CSS to change this, but we can use CSS to change the text and the buttons and the way things look on the screen and the formatting. So yeah, we can do that here, and it should be pretty straightforward. Again, it's going to look kind of confusing to start, but if you follow along exactly how I do things, I don't see you having any problems. So let's take a look at our code. I think last video we declared the style tags up here in the head. So what the CSS is going to go in our style sheet here, in our style tag here. So the way it works is you can declare what's called classes or IDs in your HTML tags. So what I mean by that is if I go here into the start tag, this is the stop tag here, this is the start tag. If I go to start tag here, I click space and I say class equals quotation quotation. So this is what's called a class, and this is where we can declare our our families for our CSS. So let's take a look at the website. So first and foremost, I want to push this. I want this to be centered. I want everything to be centered on my screen. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that. So I'm going to make a tag called center text. Okay, center dash text. And then up here in the style tags, inside it, I'm going to say dot center dash text, and then open and close curly braces like that. Okay, so that's how we declare CSS. And inside here, we can start making changes to change this. So as you can see, we're working on the div for the evacuation map text. So the div, remember, is the container that holds whatever's inside of it. In this case, we're holding this header tag, the evacuation map. So I want to center everything. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say flex, or I'm going to say display, colon, flex, semicolon. So display, colon, flex. So this is not going to make sense to you right now, but what we're doing here is we're basically declaring we want to use something called flex, which is basically the the framework that we use to align stuff on the screen. Again, it's pretty confusing. It took me a while to learn flex, but for now, just to get something functional, just copy this. Say display colon flex. Save that, and this probably isn't going to do anything. Well, gives it a little padding on top. So that's what that does. Now, again, we wanted to center it. So I want to say flex direction row. Flex dash direction row. Save that. Let's see how this looks. Okay, no changes as expected. Now we're going to say justify content center. Save that. Now refresh it. Okay, there we go. So let's take a look at what we did. We're declaring our display. We want to use the flex framework. Our flex direction is row. We're not going to get too crazy into flex right now, but basically flex can either be divided into row or column. Row is from left to right, column is from top to bottom, and that's how you declare it is how basically you can center your text and format the different boxes inside your Flex CSS. So that's how we center it. Again, it's probably not going to make a whole lot of sense to you. The point of this is to get something functional and to pique your interest. But if you could copy this exactly, you should be fine. So now we have this class called center text, and we declared it here. Another thing we can do, and this is kind of just for demonstration, is we can also declare things with an ID. So an ID is more specific than a class. So an ID is specific to a certain tag. So we can say this header top. So we can say ID equals header top, and now we can go declare it up here. And how we call our ID is by using a hashtag. So we say header dash top. And let's say we want to change the font size to, let's say, 40 pixels. Save that here, and our font size is now 40 pixels. I'm going to get rid of this because I want to leave that alone for now. But that's just how you declare an ID and how you can adjust your CSS or the way things look inside your HTML through an ID. Same exact thing, but you're just calling it with this hashtag instead of a dot. And that's kind of where, you think of like Twitter hashtags and stuff like that. It's a way to categorize posts and stuff like that. Hey, that's kind of what we're doing here with CSS. So let's erase that and erase this. We're going to leave that alone for now and not delete the curly brace. So save that. And now what we're going to do is I want to apply the centering to everything, to all of our divs that contain some sort of HTML. So I want you to copy and paste this class equals center text into this div, into this div, into this div, into this div. So anything that has a div containing some HTML elements, being their image tag or paragraph tag or buttons, I want you to put this center text class on those divs. So go ahead and save that and refresh it. See how that looks. Okay. So we did it. We centered everything. We centered everything with this center text class. And you can see how it makes it very convenient to kind of just make one class and apply it to a bunch of different things. Because now anytime we want to center something, we can just copy and paste the center text class and bam, our item is centered. So that in a nutshell is kind of how we center stuff. We use this flex framework. We say display flex. We say the flex direction we want is row, and we say we want to justify the content in the center. We could also say right. And guess where it's going to align now? Yep, it aligns to the right. That looks really weird, so we are going to change that back. And again, as you're going through, and if you want to make your own projects, I would recommend just kind of Googling stuff, because that's what I do. I'll Google like, hey, how do I make, this like font look like, something. And typically Google is pretty good about giving what you want. So say, hey, I want to center something to the right and have the font size be 20 pixels. And Google, if you type that into Google, it'll give you a result that'll kind of get you in the right direction. But this is how we declare our CSS. We can use IDs and classes. So we say class center text, and yeah, so we're centered. Next, I want to bring in some fonts. So I want this to be a certain font, and I want this to be a certain font. So what we're going to do is we're going to use another class. Equals, we're going to use classes again here. So this class, we're going to say evacuation header, and this class we're going to call equals evacuation paragraph. Okay, so let's type that in. Evacuation dash header, and then dot evacuation dash paragraph. That's not how you spell paragraph, is it? Paragraph. Okay. So I want the header. Let's say I want the font size. I want this to be, let's say 24 pixels. And then I want this font size to be, let's say 16 pixels. So save that. And every time you declare something inside a class or an ID in your style tags, you got to put the semicolon after it, which says, all right, my statement's done. So that's what the semicolon is here for. So I don't see anything changed. Why is that? Maybe that's just the default. Let's try 30 pixels. Why is this not working? Oh, I know why. Evacuation header. I spelled it wrong. Evacuation header. Evacuation header. So let's try it again. Now, okay, so that bumped that up a little bit. Let's go to 34, and let's say this will be 18. Save that. Okay, there we go. So font's a little bigger. I still think the font is gross, so we're going to pull some Google fonts. So yeah, what I did there was I just went to Google, I typed in Google font, and this is how we can pick out some really neat custom fonts that Google applies to us. So click on Google Fonts and find something you like. I am going to use, what am I going to use? I don't know. This one looks cool. Click it. So you click the font you like, and then you can kind of see what style you want. I'm going to say select this style, and over here, it's going to give you some instructions on how to import it. So for this, it says to use on the web to embed a font, copy the code in the head of your HTML. So just copy what it says here under the link, copy. It says into the head of the HTML. So what this is doing is linking a style sheet. It's linking to the Google Font API. And now I want to call it. So to call this font for where you want to apply it, just take this declaration here, this font family Montserrat, and paste it to your fonts. Save that. Now let's see how that, go back here. Let's see how that looks. Okay. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Yeah, that'll work. I mean, it's not pretty, but you can you can play around with it. You can find whatever font you want, and just use these use the instructions here to apply it. But for now, it's fine. Let's keep it like that. Lastly, for the CSS, I want to make these buttons a little nicer. So let's make another class name. You guessed it, class equals, let's just say evacuation button. Okay, so copy and paste this for all your buttons. And now, what are we going to do next? You guessed it. Go up to our style and drop this class tag dot evacuation button. And yep, and here, this is where we're gonna style it. So first off, I want all these buttons to be the same width and the same height. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna declare the width. We're gonna declare the width as 150, and we're gonna declare the height as 200. Or let's do not 200. Let's do 60 pixels. So that should give these a default width and height. Okay, this is a little too big for me. Let's try 30. It's a little too small for me. Let's try 40. Perfect. Okay, so now these have a default width and height that we just declared by saying width, 150 pixels, height, 40 pixels. I want these to be separated a little bit. I want some space. I want some space around these buttons. So we're going to do that through something called a margin. And we're going to declare it as 5 pixels and see how that looks. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. You know what I want? I also want these fonts to match this font. So let's go ahead and say font family. Say font size. We're going to make this a little smaller. Let's make it 14 pixels and say the font family is this. So declare it. Okay, cool. This is a little hard to see this text here. So I want to change the background of these buttons here. I want to change the background. So I want the background to be, let's say, tomato. Oh, I love that color. I want the background to be tomato. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. I want to change the font color to white. So we do that through font color. white. There's no such thing as color, just color. So color applies to the font color inside. Okay. Now I want to get rid of the outline and the border. Outline, so we do that, say outline none, border none, save that. Okay, so now we got rid of that outline and border. I know I'm going super fast, but just try and keep up as best you can. And my suggestion is to just practice this as much as possible so you get used to it. But for now, you know, I'm kind of whipping through, so you got to kind of get a taste for this. I don't really like this font, to be honest. I think what I'm going to do in the GitHub repository where you can copy and paste is I'm going to use a different font that I like more, but kind of for the tutorial purposes, this is fine. And the last thing I want to do here with these buttons is I want to give them, I want to make it so when I hover over the button, I want it to have a pointer. I want the mouse to be a pointer, and I want the background color to change to something darker. So we do that by using something called the hover. So we call our class evacuation button, then we say hover. Okay, now we're going to say background color coral. I don't know if this is lighter or darker. I think this might be a little lighter. That's fine. And if we want it to be the cursor to be a pointer, we declare that in this one here, pointer. So save that, refresh that, and bam, we see the coral. Coral? Walking Dead, you get it. So yeah, we have the mouse is now a pointer, and the button changes color. And one last thing we can do to kind of make it really pretty is we can use a transition. Say 0.3s ease in dash out. Save that. So what that's going to do is it's going to kind of delay the hover function a little bit. So it's a little smoother there. Yeah, so that's pretty much CSS in a nutshell. Again, I know I whipped through it really, really quickly, but my advice is to just practice as much as possible after this video. There's zillions and zillions of different ways you can call, how to build your site out and make it look nice. There's so many different ways you can do it. This is just one of them. So if you're interested in this stuff, I urge you to keep kind of watching tutorials, but this should just kind of give you a taste for CSS. So yeah, next video, we're going to jump into some JavaScript and we're going to make this thing work. So I hope to see you guys next video.